I'll gently kick off proceedings because the first bit's the boring bit. It's just me introducing myself. It's not really what people are here for, so I can get that started anyway. But thank you all for joining us and taking the time. Very much appreciated for what should be a super interesting and very thought-provoking hour of your time. As a brief introduction, my name is Andy Smith. I'm a co-founder at TDA Creative. And whilst talent and helping design talent into new jobs is our day job, our passion is definitely helping the wider design community by hosting events and meetups such as this. And this one I'm super excited by. The role of human centricity, design and creativity in the new age of AI. So without further ado, and with huge thanks, I'd like to introduce our key presenter, Elko Lomas, who's a Global Director of Product and Experience at IKEA. Thanks, Elko. And our two special guests who will be on the panel supporting Elko. We have Anthony Reeves, ex-Global Director of Amazon and a Global Partner at Essence Media. Thanks, Anthony. And last but not least, we have Sarah Keating, Global Director and Head of Design at Philips. Thank you. So I'll hand over in a minute, but just to give a bit of context on how the next hour will work, Elko is going to give us a bit of a quick breakdown on why this topic. And then we're going to go into more of a panel discussion, which we want to be interactive and open. I've got 4 pre-qualified questions here I'll be putting to the panel. I'm going to have 10 minutes or so for each one, but feel free to put your hand up, add a question into the chat here. If there's something you'd like to hear on it, if we have time, we'll certainly get to those questions too. So to start off, I'll hand you over to Elko.
Yeah, I'll quickly share my screen. All righty. There we go. Can you see the screen?
I can.
Right. Okay, good. So thank you all for joining. So I first bounced around the idea of having this discussion with Kimberly and Sean a couple of months ago, and the AI explosion just started off. And as amazing as all of that really came out, right, there was a certain type of media or a certain type of communication around AI that was very prevalent. And if we are now a couple of months later, and if you really look at the explosion of AI news posts and experts, either legit experts or self-proclaimed, they're still flooding our timelines and inboxes. And that would lead you to believe, if you don't follow this 10-step program or subscribe to all of these lists or key AI tools and listen to all of these influencers, that you are missing out because AI is coming for us, right? And to put things into perspective, we all remember growth hackers and golden circle strategists and Bitcoin archaeologists and NFT scouts and metaverse gurus. And these are all fields in which real experts are still making a difference today, yet the hype has passed and the fortune tellers have moved on to the new hype of AI. And this is understandable because as much as both the skeptics and the excitement really resonates with me, the danger in hyping AI is that we could be blind for the potential profound change that could bring to all of us. Because we mostly talk about the technology itself, the operational output, the speed, the ease, the change in all of this. But of course, the danger in that it could be seen by senior business executives and companies as a perfect operational efficiency tool, a tool to replace people without understanding truly what it is the tool needs to do. So the question is, can we really replace people that easily? Can AI become truly human-centered? Can it have real empathy? Can it look you in the eye and comfort you, inspire you, excite you, come up with crazy new concepts that you've never experienced? Does it understand how to be inclusive and mindful? And will it help us to find purpose in our daily lives? Well, it might, but I believe if we put humans at the heart of this, and this is not a discussion that I see getting around very much. And this is why I thought having this talk would be really great. So maybe for now we can park the thought that AI is going to take our jobs and talk about what humans could do, what designers, engineers, scientists, and businesses should do to build a future that excites all of us. So I thought it was time to discuss this, and I'm really glad that Sarah and Anthony will join me today to share their experience and give their opinion on what I believe a very exciting era in our lives as creatives and professionals could be. But there's things that need to be discussed that are not frequently discussed already. And being human-centered and being creative can ensure that no one gets left behind. And I believe this is our joint responsibility, and this is why I think this is a discussion worth having. But before we kick off with the whole question thing, I'd like to ask the group present in this call to scan the code. I'll get there in a minute, and answer 2 questions that we can then see in a word cloud. Is, of course, what do you think the biggest challenge for you will be through AI?
Yeah,
and
I'm listening to a webinar. Okay.
So I'll stop. I'll go to the web page. Let's see. I need to stop sharing first and then reshare with the web page because that won't work. Alrighty. Can you guys see my see the Slido screen?
Yep.
Alrighty. So if everyone could go to the Slido, I'll minimize this here and scan the QR code and answer the first question. What do you believe the biggest challenge AI will bring to you in your work? And then once we've done this, there's a second question in the poll. It's what's opportunity do you believe it has? But I'll show that in a minute. But it's the same Slido, and it's the same code. Still some people typing. Amazing. So I see competition, ethically implemented, learning new things, data sets that it's learning from. So the source material, skill gap, training, governance, role change, the fear of the job, as we discussed, of course, differentiation against other designers, role changes, speed. So the biggest challenges would be all of those. Amazing. And then for the second question of our poll, can you describe in one word or short sentence the biggest opportunity you believe AI will bring to you and your work? And of course, we've prepared some of the things that we would like to discuss with you, but having this as input is also really good to spark off the discussion, because it also shows right what's on your mind and where we could tap into to have a really open conversation around this. Automation, ability to rapidly iterate, more time to be creative, brainstorming large amounts, time saving, having more time to lead strategy, efficiency, ability to rapidly iterate, different design styles. Ooh. Good, good, good. Amazing. One participant still typing. Alrighty. So this is all great stuff, guys. And I think it's a really good starting point for us to start the discussion. And if there's anything that you guys shared in here that you'd like to discuss during the open panel that we have, feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat the question that you would like to get answered. And if you raise your hand, right, our moderator will make sure to open the mic and include those in the discussion that'd like to add a few thoughts into the discussion that's going on. So without further ado, I'm going to give back the floor to Andrew, who is going to kick us off with the first kind of the start off question.
Well, funny enough, the question is the one that we've just put to the panel, but we're going to go on a deeper dive. So to the panel, what do you believe to be the biggest challenges that AI will bring to you and to your teams?
Who would like to go first?
Hey, I can jump in. So I think some of the challenges that we faced are, well, there's a few things. There's, some of the things that we know about, which is that there's the bias that exists in the internet, and AI is in some ways gathering that up and amplifying it. So that's one watch out or worry. The second, from a challenge perspective, as far as I'm concerned, is as we move into using more AI, it's protecting the IP and even the individual rights of people, of the creators. For example, we were exploring using metahumans in photography, right? Which is, at times can be composited from different pieces of people across the internet. And yes, it doesn't look like any one person, but it's still taking a little bit of each person. And so ethically, what does that mean? So really deep diving into the ethics, I think, is something that I'm very interested in learning more about and thinking about. And I think the third thing is to use generative AI in a way that you actually have to put work into it. So creating your own data set. So it's not just saying, okay, what's out there in the internet. So you either, if you were trying to do metahumans or something similar, thinking about, maybe we, scan 100 people and then we use those people with their permission to do so. And so there's thinking about how do we create our own data sets and then use it the right way so that we're taking the unconscious bias and things like that out of the system.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the ethics question, and specifically copyright, is going to be a really big one. But one of the bigger overarching topics I would see is that a huge challenge is that the companies and leaders we work for see AI as a means to optimize their operations only, right? And this comes from a perspective at the moment where we see the type of work a lot of designers and creatives are doing today without AI are based increasingly on operations, optimization, repetition, and scaling, which means that, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, I'm just saying that this is something specifically in product design that we see today. And specifically in delivering products and services, there's already so much out there that is not designed in a way that it fulfills any need for anyone. And the danger in scaling this with AI, it means that the amount of shitty products and services that are going to be out there without understanding truly what people need, just because it can do the operations perfectly, that's a big danger to overflow the market with non-relevant product for people, and also to disregard the role of design and research and actually creating this foundation to which we can build AI on that is human-centered and has empathy and is inclusive. So I think because it's such a new tool, and of course it makes operations easier, and one could argue if a designer should do 50 UI pages a day of the same UI, and then a researcher needs to go through all 4,000 pages of research to get the insights. One could argue if that is truly necessary today, but the aspect of what design brings in regards to what operations would need to be optimized, I think there's a bit of a danger in there, but that's from that perspective organizationally.
Yeah, I do want to spend a bit of time talking about the incredible bias that already exists within the AI at the moment, and it's important that we do discuss it. But leaving off what we just talked, Alko just talked about, then, when all the inputs are going to be pretty much the same, the output of AI has a very high chance of being very, very vanilla. And as humans, we tend to be very emotional in what we buy, very emotional in what we do, and you read all these studies that 90% of our purchasing decisions are made on an emotional level rather than a rational level. And if AI is producing the same for everybody, whether it's the same image of somebody or same general thought, then the work we produce from a design point of view or from a creative point of view has a great chance of being very, very vanilla. And at the end of the day, as humans, we like things that are different, right? We like to lean into things and make sure that we're pushing forward and being on the edge. And if AI is putting out a consistent level of work, then what's going to stand out? Like in 3 years' time, what's going to make one brand different from another brand, or one experience different from another experience, when we're all buying off the same AI or AI platforms? And as people in the marketing or advertising or design communities, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we understand the platform, understand AI, how to use it, but also the benefit for our brands as well. Is like, how do we use it, and when we use it, and when we decide to walk away from it, and say, as our customers or our people want something different, and only humans can do human things, and how do we create that sense of difference is critical. So with the power of AI, you got to also understand when not to use it as well.
Yeah, and when it comes to design, the art directing or creative directing it, it's not just generating on its own, right? So you're actually have the human direction as opposed to a machine that's just set into motion.
Correct.
Anthony, is there an element of, do you think, of kind of fear of missing out at this kind of stakeholder level?
It does worry me when companies say they're all in on AI. It worries me from a couple of points of view. I get myself in trouble all the time, so I'll get myself in trouble again for the sake of it. But when you're all in AI, it worries me that there's going to be a lot of people on the team straight away they're going to miss out. So I see AI at the moment. I read a PwC report the other day that AI is a very tops down. So the leaders of companies are pushing AI through the systems. What Elko said about being very about saving process and saving time and saving money and saving people. But what's happening at the moment is a lot of the people on the tools and who are really doing the work and doing the thinking, they're the ones that are sitting there confused at the moment as to what does this mean for my role, and how is AI going to really change my role, and so the missing out point of view is you've got to make the choice as an individual whether I hate the word lean in, but whether you're going to lean into AI, whether you're not going to lean into AI. And if you don't understand it and don't take this opportunity to learn and grow from it, you will miss out. And if you don't learn and grow, your career is not going to get a tailwind either. So you really need to understand it and don't miss out. But there's so much chatter around AI, and as we just talked about earlier, if anyone says they're an expert in AI, it's totally not true, right? Like it's this huge growing thing that's happening at the moment. It scares me that we have experts out there, and they might be experts in one area, but they're never going to be experts over the whole impact of AI on our community.
No, I think it's good to have a healthy skepticism to people that used to be NFT jockeys and then became metaverse gurus and now all of a sudden are AI evangelists, right? And we've got a lot of those that bombard you with the 12-step programs and all of that stuff. But I'd like to counterweight a bit towards what you just said, Anthony, around going all in and making sure that you don't miss the boat, because there's two sides to that story, because we are already as creatives, right? And I see that all around me, and even the World Health Organization has called for action based on that. There are so many professionals that are burned out or close to burnout because of how the world is organized in a very operational efficiency way. And I am one of those people, so I can relate to that very much. And what I do see with a lot of the people that want to have that space as designers to understand and to have empathy and take the space to conceptualize what is asked of them, and it's barely there anymore. And now, as an addition to that, there's this tool that is said that it can do everything better and faster and quicker than us. So it just adds to the pressure of are we still being taken serious as design and creative professionals, right? And I think that's also a discussion we need to have, because I think AI can be amazing, but without design at its heart, without human centricity as its heart, it's just going to be another optimization tool, nothing more, nothing less.
Elko, I could not agree more, especially with the burnout, because I do think that AI can potentially increase the pace, right? So even if it has what you call design at the center, or creativity at the center, just the fact that we can quickly churn out in an hour 40 images or 2 essays or whatever it is that you're working on, that pace will increase, and it doesn't slow down for anyone. It'll just become more and more that we will be forced to focus on and expand, and to be flexible around. So agree that it can come at a very large cost for designers in this situation as well.
And I think that leads us very nicely onto our second question, actually, which is, do you believe AI can become truly human-centered, inclusive, and demonstrate human-like empathy? Now, if you don't mind, I'll put that one to you, Sarah, first of all, because I know you've got a lot of thoughts around this.
Yeah, I do. And so for me, it's not whether AI can be truly empathetic, but can we use it in a different way? And I talked a bit earlier about unconscious bias and things like that. I do believe that we can use AI to combat misconceptions, societal biases, unconscious bias, as I said, cultural stereotypes, if we do it right. And I think it goes back to creating your own data set and training AI on that. So instead of going out to the World Wide Web and say, okay, show me, bring me, a campaign, let's just pretend we're marketing designers, bring me an ad campaign that's focused on this particular lifestyle. And then you get back very, cisgender, white, middle class, whatever. And because that's what's on the internet today, or lots of pictures of cats. But instead of creating a database that actually encapsulates the user stories and the topics and the images that you believe are right, then using it with that particular data set, I think we can generate content that can battle our own unconscious biases and our own tendencies to go with what we are used to and what we like. So I think there's things that we can do. If left to itself, I think it's incredibly dangerous. But I do think if we make that investment and create that data set, that we can use it to promote inclusivity or different content tailored to different audiences. If we take that first step to make sure that we're creating the right data that the generative AI is consuming.
Yeah. Anthony, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually do think it's interesting, Sarah, what you said about creating your own data sets. Like I am very worried about the inclusivity of AI as a general area, right? Because we were chatting as a pre-meeting about, if you search for a doctor, for example, guaranteed a white male is going to pop up, and our inner core says to us that's not the right answer. So the ability to create your own data set is critical. But what's even interesting from that is the separation between AI and human intelligence is going to be zero. Is you first needed the human aspect to create your own data set. This is what I believe is going to be the right mix of people, look, color, size, big, small, pink, green, etc. This is what I really think is right for my own data set. Then AI will take it from that point onwards. So AI truly is helping you be more efficient, but it's not actually helping you do the original thinking. And that will, which I believe is probably the right way to take it, is making sure there's a true element of humanity in there across the way. Now, Andrew, you did ask the question though, is can it be truly empathetic? And a huge part of my inner core says no, it can't. There's been attempts and tries before about being empathetic. Even at a base level, if you ask, Bard or ChatGPT to write a thank you email for you, that thank you email comes back and it's kind of very sappy and not a very pleasant reading experience. With how fast humans change and how much we want to be part of a greater experience, I don't believe that AI has a learning ability to learn how to be human enough. I would say at least for another 2 to 3 years. And by that time, we have moved forward with what we want as people, as connections. And you know, can you imagine having this panel in 2 years' time, having, I don't know, like bland images sitting in front of you talking about it? I don't know whether that's going to happen or not.
Yeah. I think Justin von Braun actually had a good comment on that in the chat, right, where he talks about this. Justin, are you there maybe to kind of enlighten us with what you had to say in the chat? Maybe.
I am sorry, I was eating.
No worries.
My comment is, and you know, they touched on this a little bit at FigmaCon and several other, you know, bigger conferences recently. And this fear that AI is going to replace designers and it's going to replace artists and it's going to replace photographers it's real, but I think it's a little misplaced, because at the heart of it, all good AI generation needs a good artist to prompt that AI to create really good things. And as an AI artist myself, I go through 3,000 to 5,000 images before I find or create the one that is truly exceptional. It's not this process of like, you know, Mid-Journey where you just like put some basic characters in and then it creates this truly amazing thing. No, that's just not the fact. And so, you know, there are going to be designers and creatives that will be replaced by AI, but you know, those are the designers and creatives who are, you know, the subpar designers, but the truly skilled designers don't have any reason to be wary of AI being replacing them.
Hey, Justin, do you believe, or have you heard that, do you believe a gap will be widening between the really great designers and the average person then, from what you're saying?
I think so, in the way that you can have a really good designer who understands how to visually tell stories. And then you can have designers who are just production designers. They're just the ones who, you know, take whatever information they've been given and they just create an output. And I think there's always going to be a need for production, of course, but there's going to continue to grow to be the need for those visual storytellers and art directors who can really tell that narrative and really prompt the AI in that way to really create beautiful and amazing things. I don't think that's going to go anywhere.
But maybe that's also a bit of the hope, right? Because I think you rightly said it when I would say design as a conceptual or a means to conceptualize thoughts and ideas, to get inspired by other people's ideas, to curate those ideas, is that great designers are already curators of their own inspiration that they get from all these different things. And the curation or the tools to curate get different, right? Because now you have generative AI in which you need to curate your thoughts and make sure that it produces what you want. And the gap between people that can have those ideas and conceptualize their thoughts into something remarkable, and the gap between, let's say, the last, I would say, decade, where the demand for production designers increased, right? Because there's so much that needed to be produced and that needed to be created from a product design or experience design perspective. That gap will certainly widen, I expect. But the one good thing I see in there is that it actually opens up our ability to really craft and tell remarkable stories. And this technology allows us to execute on those stories where before it took time or took a whole team of people to kind of visualize or make real the ideas that you have. And now you can at least prototype and try out and test, feel, and learn all of those ideas that you have. And because there's a human at the center, it makes the starting point more empathetic. It makes a starting point more inclusive if the person asking the AI to solve something gives that as a precondition of what needs to be solved.
Yeah, hey, can I follow up on that? So I think, so one of the key things that I think we're so great about every kind of designer and creative copywriter Illustrator, whatever, is our curiosity. And so I think that's one of the things that AI can certainly propel is that what if moment, right? So Jason, Justin, you were talking about 1,000, images very quickly. So it's that what if moment. What if I did this? What if I did that? That kind of rapid concepting that I think that AI can really help propel. And then I think can be really exciting and really help us to fully explore that curiosity that we all have as designers and to really focus on that. So I think that's great. Absolutely.
So Sarah, maybe you could also answer Mvora's question in the chat. Mvora, would you like, I don't know if I pronounce your name correctly.
Yeah, this is Mansi Vora. I somehow truncated the name, but yes, you got my last name right.
Okay, good. Maybe you want to ask the question to Sarah in this particular case?
Yeah, Sarah, I think, what I've been wondering about is for, people on this panel and, attendees today who lead teams, how do we protect the interests of younger individuals who aren't that experienced, who don't feel confident in decision-making just yet? They're still, more skill-based, still feel probably marginally more threatened than experienced individuals. How do we give them the time to evolve and mature while using AI, and will they feel outpaced by more experienced individuals?
I was thinking exactly that same thought when we were talking earlier that, how do we, do those junior designers who may have started as Photoshop monkeys, for lack of a better word, actually engage if we're just going to turn to things like generative AI to do those activities. And I have two thoughts on that. One is, I think that we can continue to find and foster junior people, but I also do think that the junior people are going to be way the heck ahead of us when it comes to being curious and saying, what if? You think of, okay,
right,
a bit hackneyed, the marshmallow and spaghetti challenge, right? It's the truly curious, like, what if I did this? What if I hung it from the ceiling? What if I did that? That really, allows them to come to great solutions faster. And so that's the first thing. It may be the people who are somewhat later to the game, but not quite as late as some of us who have matured within the creative field that may be a little bit more challenged, I'd say. So I think that there's different ways to do it. I myself am very intentional about mentoring others and bringing others along, because I do think as, bringing up others with us is so important. And that's a big part of it, as well as making sure that, you're reaching out to the younger generations and bringing them along and heck, they're teaching us too. Right.
Maybe this is also an interesting point for Anthony to pick up, given his vast content experience, because and what you are saying is what I truly hear is that young designers are migrating from being typical design professionals to actually creators, which is very prevalent among the younger generations, is that they see themselves as creators, not necessarily tied down to the confined area of design. And Anthony, you have a lot of experience in that area, right? So what's your thought on that? And particularly the mentorship and what skills we would need to teach those young professionals.
Thanks, Elko. I think both Sarah and Justin are 100% right. And the interesting thing is when Sarah was talking, I was thinking purely of myself because I'm selfish that way, but I'm not really on the tools anymore. Like if I have to use Firefly now, it would take me like 20 times longer than I would say someone with 2 to 3 years of experience. That's just life. And even a base Photoshop now, if I'm retouching our daughter's photograph, it just takes me forever to do it. And it is part of like learning and leaning in, and that mentorship has to be there. But I actually think the mentorship is about creating room and letting people lean in on their own area. And if you want to grow in your career, I think part of it is doing it and just using DALL-E on Shutterstock, or just playing around with it. And that's the number one thing, is just get in there. And people were asking like 3 years ago when TikTok started, like, how do I do TikTok? It's like the first thing you do is create an account and just start doing it. And the more you just do it, the better off you're going to be. And we're seeing this consistently when new technologies, new platforms, new media come out, is how do you do it? And the first step is don't be afraid of it. like and just try it. Doesn't mean it has to go out in the ether where everyone has to see it, but just play around is probably the single thing to do with it. And as a leader, my job is to create room for that. And I know that everyone has timesheets to do, and you have to have a certain amount of billable hours. We want people to be like 85% billable, etc. But there are also training budgets and operational budgets which are time-based, that you can create room for people to spend a couple of hours a week just playing around with it and making sure that they know that that is like a safety zone for them to experiment. And as designers, as creative people, as our job is to really help society and brands move forward, if we're not doing that on our own accord and sitting there waiting for the job to come in, our job is going to be obsolete. So the more you can sort of engage, the better off you're going to be into the future.
Yeah. So would that, because that's of course the mentorship part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I would give my perspective on this, I think it goes a little bit further than that, right? Because I do think classically trained designers, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, needed different skills, right? Even 20 years ago, those designers needed different skills than designers 10 years ago. And I think today designers should invest much more into their empathy skills, their conceptual and collaborative skills, their critical thinking, their use of narrative, right? When visualizing an idea or a concept, or visualizing a need that they see in human beings. And given that that's already quite present in the current generation, I think that step is in the end shouldn't have to be that big, right? And indeed, it comes with mentorship, particularly given space in that area to explore more than we are allowed to do today, right? Because that's one of the caveats, is that I hear back from a lot of designers in my area, is that there is so little room for thinking and exploration at the moment, because there's so much that is asked of us. And my hope is, at least from that perspective, is that once AI can do some of the heavy lifting, that we will have more time to reflect and to think conceptually around, is what we are doing at the moment the best thing to do, right? Can we conceptually lift it up, right? Can we create something even more remarkable with a greater story that will move people in the direction where we want them to move? I think skilling, or at least allowing for those skills to kind of change the role of a designer, I think it's also an important part of it.
Great.
Thanks for that, Elko. I'm pleased to say that actually our third question was around advice for professionals and what they should do in this new world, and you've already been answering that kindly. So we'll skip forward to our fourth question, and as we know, challenges create opportunities. So the fourth question is, if we are to look ahead to the future, what opportunities do you hope a future with AI would bring for the creative industry? Elko, would you like to kick us off there?
Yeah. So it goes different ways, right? So for me, a part has to do with hoping that we are entering an age of creativity, right? Empowered by AI. That's really my hope, right? So realizing our ideas and concepts should be much easier than it is today. I mean, if you got a great idea and you write a really compelling story, there are tools out there that will allow you as an individual to create a Hollywood quality movie in a couple of weeks, where normally it would take a team of 50 people months to do the same work, right? So that gives a perspective on the power of ideas and creativity. I hope it sparks the opportunity to have more time to think about the meaning of the work that we do, because I do believe that creatives could help some of the biggest issues of our time by creativity and employing design thinking to those problems, but it's simply not asked of us, because we has to be focusing on the operational stuff. So the amount of, I one thing that I really would love, and then I hand it over to Sarah or Anthony, is there's many different perspectives on what AI could do. I personally believe that AI could usher in a screenless future, right? Where we get to interact with the world around us through AI, that we are not closed off behind our screens anymore, and that AI can actually enrich the environment in which we move around, and increase and enrich the relationships that we have, guide conversations, help us with things. And there's actually an former Apple designer, Imran Chaudhry. He's exploring such things with his own company, where AI actually is this personal companion that you take along with you, that translates people speaking other languages for you, that helps you with the tasks that you need to do, that gives you input, that gives you inspiration, purely based on your own, like Sarah just said, it's kind of like your own personal assistant with a data set that has been shaped by you as an individual, meaning that this AI is for you, and it helps you with the things that you need, and becomes human-centered because you feed it to be that way, right? And I really hope for a future such as that, right? I hope the age of creativity is upon us.
Elko, may I ask on that one? I mean, how in your mind, in your vision, how does that look? Not having screens, how would we be interacting with that personal AI? What technology would give us that base? Do you see?
Well, there's obviously voice, right? It's not mature yet, right? But there's already a lot of people using voice for different things. But at the moment, it doesn't feel that personal because it's not tailored towards our needs, because it's more general, and the assessment of or the usage of it is very general. But if it becomes a personal assistant speaking in a voice that you appreciate, that you may even cultivate, right, that speaks your type of language, that has your type of humor, that helps you with the typical things that you have trouble with, that would be, or could be, amazing, right? And of course, haptics play an important role in this, but also projecting surfaces, right? If would you need screens if you would want to know what the weather is, and you look outside and you see a projection, or your AI projects on the window out there to exactly what the weather is going to be, you're not going to need a screen to be the gateway to all of that information. The information will just be around you, right? And it enables us to share these hybrid experiences with other people, which I think is a great thing, because now we have our own private experience being on a screen. But if you have shared digital experiences in the space itself, it's a great way of connecting people as well, right? But that's maybe wishful thinking and being very optimistic about what could be possible.
This was the opportunity question.
Elko,
But
I
it-
love
yeah.
the reframe of saying feeding the AI as opposed to input.
Yeah.
So it's something that you're caring for. You're not
Yes.
giving it commands and data even, but you're caring for it and growing it. It's, for yourself and for others. I love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah, so maybe I can slightly piggyback on that. Is so when I was working in Germany, Publicis Sapient, we did some research for Daimler, right, and the automotive industry, on why self-driving cars were so difficult to pull off. And it turned out that if you deal with any form of artificial intelligence or technology that makes decisions for you, the lack of personality actually is the big thing why it doesn't work, right? Because you can get in a cab and sit in the back with another person driving you, because that person has personality, so you can relate to it in a certain way. But if AI doesn't have a personality that appeals to you or that you can relate to, it's really difficult to put the trust into that machine, right? So I always used, and in Germany it works well, right, because David Hasselhoff is quite big, but I always used Kit and Knight Rider as a perfect example of a personality of a car that fits perfectly to the rider of the car. It has the same humor, it understands the driver. And I think if you will get a personal assistant, you would need the same. You would like your personal assistant to have your type of humor, to understand you, to just need one word and it gets you, right? Like any normal assistant would be, but then one with unlimited vast amounts of knowledge and resources at his disposal. I think that could be really nice.
Okay, that begs so many questions about David Hasselhoff, but I'll take it offline because we have to go a separate direction. But it's interesting what you say about personality, because as humans, we're very tribal, right? Like we would like to be around other people, and we like touch, we like feel, like smell, etc. And if AI doesn't have a personality, or if the design you're creating doesn't have a personality or doesn't have a feel, how can we truly solve the problems for our clients, for our teams, or for the companies we work for? And our job is to create a personality. And there's no other reason why you create a brand, or why Amazon or whichever retailer pushes you to sale, is for that personality. And you think of even Amazon, I ordered something this morning and I needed it today, and that's a part of the personality. I expect delivery today, and that's the personality. So I do believe that what you said earlier is AI will open up creativity a lot more, and allow us to be more tribal, because it will take away that execution and that really heavy lifting and give us time for more of the thinking part.
Well, and maybe this is rubbing some people the wrong way, but I do believe it goes even beyond that, right? I mean, AI, where now a lot of us creatives are asked to deliver certain things that people may or may not need, right? One can debate on that, but most of the time, the success of a product or the adaptation of a service that you created tells you enough if whether it's truly been based on human needs, and is it human centered or not. With AI, the good thing is that you cannot get away with it anymore just because the other company has something similar, so we built the same stuff, because it won't work that way, because the AI needs to be very personal, which means we need to understand and use those needs much better, as we sometimes do today, right? Because it's generally productive in nature of what is asked of us. And I do see design as gaining momentum at the moment, because we just come out of a decade of very engineering focused product development, which means that there is operational excellence in that, but it doesn't always mean, I mean, operational excellence does not equal impact, does not equal value for people, right? And this is the balance that now is becoming better. However, I do believe AI will tip that balance in the favor of designers, because in order to make it work, you truly need to understand what do we need to do and for whom do we need to do it, because if else it simply won't work.
I guess with design always being quite subjective, that lends to the favour of designers in a world of AI, does it not?
Sarah, do you want to take it on?
Sorry, Anthony?
I was going to say, Sarah, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think that's if you think about a lot of even the UX, UI websites, which one starts to feel like the next at the moment, because, and I think it's exactly what you're saying, that it's being driven by the technology, and for the right reasons, being driven by the user experience and the expected user experience. But I do feel like we sometimes lose that spark of ingenious and surprise, and like, oh, what was that? And why did that happen? And this idea of surprisingly obvious, right? So it's obvious, but it surprises that it's that kind of the tension. We miss the tension when everything is so seamless. And so I think getting some of that power back in being creative, and some of that time to be creative as opposed to constantly churning things out is the magic indeed.
Yeah.
It's the balance between being precise in what you do and making sure that the technology enables that, but also understanding if it truly solves a need that people have, right? Having that balance between being human-centric and having excellent engineering capabilities in delivering on that, right? Which is from experience, a difficult balance sometimes to uphold, right? Because of course a business has goals, and how wants to communicate certain things, wants to deliver on certain products and services that they have in mind. And sometimes we, in hindsight, find human needs that could be solved with what we create. But more and more, I see the necessity of actually first understanding what people need, and therefore then shaping a product or a service around that, right? And I truly hope that we're moving into an era where that becomes more and more the norm.
Yeah. What we're paid to do in our professional lives generally is solve problems for clients, or solve problems for the brands that we work for or working on, and that's our job, and that's what we're paid to do. And we all have projects on the side that we might enjoy doing more. If AI, generally speaking, and even though you have your own data sets, helps every company have the same access to the same operations, to the same design, to the same tools, systems, and everything like that. The only thing that can really make one brand, one company separate itself from other company is the thinking that everyone on this call or on the video recording adds into it. So what Sarah and Alko are saying is true, is the human inputs, or the feeding of AI, is going to be more critical than ever before. And I believe that it is a chance for designers, or even writers, or designers will become writers, to have a greater input on the direction of a lot of companies.
Yeah. So maybe, Sarah, I see a question from Geo George in the chat that may be good for you to answer, right? So one often used arguments against AI created work that it lacks heart. Through this is true, it's often dismissed as an emotional response. Any rational arguments that could make the benefit the having AI with heart? Or maybe Geo George, you can hop on to quickly elaborate on the point that you just made.
Yeah, the point that we had started the discussion with, that a lot of times that's the response that you get, that, that's the argument that you make, that AI is just machine. It's not really, doesn't have the emotion, doesn't have the heart. But to people who are sort of countering it with a rational sort of, argument, what is it that we can then bring to the table, saying, how do you counter that? Have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's going back to this idea of feeding and nurturing. And as Justin, I think, said earlier, it's not necessarily creating, putting in some inputs and something spits out and you're like, okay, I'm done. Okay, time to go home. It's about, going back and saying, how does that work? What works about that? What do I see differently? How can I change that? And maybe it's even just at this point, it can change over time, but maybe at this point it's rapid generation, and then for concepts, and then you take it into your own hands and you evolve it yourself, depending on what your skill set is. But I do think it's the lack of emotion is because you're just putting in, it could be someone is just putting in something and receiving something back. In its early days, things will change over time. But if we could, I love this idea of creating your own, whether it's a generative AI assistant or something like that, or if it's just having your own data set where you're the person and infusing it with emotion. It's you're creating it that way. It's not, I think Anthony used to, getting a sappy email back because that's what's out on the internet. And yeah, you could just sit there and search for that, right? But it's about bringing it's your responsibility as the creative to infuse the emotion and the curiosity and the creativity.
Anthony, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it made me think of something that came up. I'm guessing maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where a studio used AI to write another Harry Potter book, and I don't know if anyone's seen this before, but it's really quite interesting, and it is old. Okay, so I'm putting it out there in the world of digital and AI. 5 years ago is really old, and when they wrote the couple of chapters of the book, or the synopsis of the next book, firstly, AI didn't think about the book itself, right? What's this story going to be about? Like, is it about this boy wizard that doesn't know he's a wizard? But it's actually just writing another chapter about the book itself. and I can't truly remember it, but Ron Weasley as a character, I believe, killed somebody that he wouldn't normally kill, and I don't know whether it was parents or killed Harry or whoever it was. But interesting thing about that is the AI didn't truly understand Ron's character as a very, very loyal friend or a very, very loyal person. And I found it very fascinating that, yes, AI can write a book, of course, but will it get into true character development and truly understand what they want to be? And that's where I think the struggle is going to be, is that, you know, I know it's a very emotional response, but you know, as humans, we need that, and we crave that. And, you know, if you haven't hugged someone for a while, you know, you haven't had that human connection, and it's going to be the same. And I feel that even recently, like Ryan Reynolds asked AI to write an ad for Mint Mobile, and it was not a very good experience. But it is new, and it can change. But I think we're a long way away from truly AI being that thing you can lean on and trust to write something quite meaningful.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Anthony. I appreciate we're closing on the hour now. So firstly, I'd like to thank you all for attending. Well, I'm sure you would agree, it's been a very thought-provoking and interesting chat. And a massive thank you to our panel, Sarah, Elko and Anthony. It'll be interesting to do this again a little bit down the line and see where we stand then. Elko, do you have any kind of closing thought for us to leave us with?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would like to, right, because I have some slides, but I'm not going to share my screen because I think having a face-to-face discussion around this is going to be much nicer. But it's, if you were to invest, or if you ask your team, and specifically the junior members on your team, but equally this, because I think a really great remark was made in the chat that also managers need to upskill to be ready for a time where they need to guide their teams into this new era of creativity. But there's a couple of aspects that I think are going to be super important, right? Be creative, be curious, show empathy, but be critical, but think limitless, right? But above all, be a human being, right? Because that connection that we just discussed, right? What gives AI its heart? It's the people behind that tell the AI what it needs to create, right? And this is the day and age where we are in, where we have instant everything, that results need to be quick, and that companies expect quick turnover. And we've discussed the dangers of that together with Sarah just some moments ago. But I think it could be more than that, because AI could raise the bar of the limits of our imagination, right? It could enable so much that we don't see ourselves being capable of today as creatives, as leaders, as people just starting in the industry, because it opens up doors that were previously closed, which means that we are only limited by our own imagination. So I'd like to leave by an open invitation with a quote from Jasmine Bina. And that quote says, "Pessimism is easy. Optimism is very hard, but still it's the optimists, not the pessimists, who make the future and who are able to stand out in the present and future." So I encourage you all to look at this as a huge opportunity and to be optimists. Critical, yes, but optimists nevertheless. So thank you all for joining this, and I really enjoyed having the discussion with you all.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you. I very much enjoyed it.
Bye-bye, guys.
All right, bye-bye.